The most exhausting part of having a sensitive spirit isn't actually what you pick up from other people in the moment. It's the mental war that starts inside your own head about an hour after the interaction is completely over. You're driving home from a meeting, a hangout, or a church service. On paper, everything went perfectly. The person smiled, they said all the right things, they might have even given you a compliment, but as you're driving, you notice this weird, heavy friction sitting right in the center of your chest. It won't leave. And instead of just honoring that weight, you spend the next 3 days completely gaslighting yourself. You start playing this frustrating mental game where you tell yourself, maybe I'm just being cynical. Maybe I'm just projecting. Let me just love them and ignore it. I'm probably just being paranoid. By the time the weekend hits, you've used up all your mental energy trying to convince yourself that what you know you felt, you didn't actually feel. We have to stop doing this to ourselves. Today, I want to talk about why we constantly talk ourselves out of our own spiritual radar, why we feel so much guilt for seeing through people, and how to finally tell the difference between your past trauma and true discernment. No cliches, no generic advice. Let's just break down the reality of how this works. The trap of forced grace and the deception curse. Let's be completely honest about why we doubt ourselves in the first place. As believers, we are heavily conditioned to be nice. From the time we are young in faith, we are told to give people grace, to look for the good, to cover offenses, and to assume the best motives in everyone. Those are beautiful, necessary principles for community. But when you possess a highly sensitive spirit, you have a bad habit of weaponizing those exact scriptures against your own sanity. The moment your radar picks up on a fake smile, an envious look, or a hidden motive, the good Christian guilt kicks right in. You immediately feel like a bad person just for noticing the flaw. You think, if I don't trust this person, am I failing to walk in love? Am I being legalistic or judgmental? So, to prove to yourself that you are walking in love, you force yourself to swallow the discomfort. You force yourself to ignore the warning. But there is a massive difference between having a critical spirit and having a discerning spirit. A critical spirit is actively searching for faults because it wants an excuse to hate, condemn, or feel superior. True discernment doesn't search for anything. It just sits there, completely quiet, and suddenly an ugly truth lands on it. Discernment is a protective boundary given by God. It is not a weapon of malice. There's a story in the Old Testament, in the book of Joshua, that perfectly illustrates this trap. A group of people called the Gibeonites wanted to trick Israel into a covenant. So they wore old dusty clothes, carried moldy bread, and acted completely harmless and exhausted. The Bible says something very specific in Joshua 9:14. It says, "The leaders of Israel sampled their provisions, but did not inquire of the Lord. They looked at the visible evidence. Everything seemed to add up on paper. They ignored their deeper spiritual radar, and they signed a contract that compromised their peace for generations." When you override your radar just to appear nice or merciful, you aren't walking in holy grace. You are walking in dangerous naivety. Protecting your peace is not a sin, and seeing the truth about someone does not make you a bad Christian. Separating anxiety from the radar. Now let's address the toughest question that every sensitive person wrestles with. How do I know I'm not just projecting my own past trauma, onto this new person. Because let's face it, if you've been lied to, cheated on, or betrayed in the past, your brain is naturally going to build defense mechanisms. It will try to tell you that everybody has a hidden motive and that the whole world is unsafe. If we can't tell the difference between our trauma and our spiritual radar, we will end up isolating ourselves from healthy relationships. So how do you separate them? It comes down to the exact emotional frequency of how the warning hits your physical body. Anxiety is incredibly loud, chaotic, and frantic. When your past trauma is triggered, it hits you with an immediate physical panic. A racing heart, a tight throat, a knot in your stomach, or a sudden rush of adrenaline. Along with that panic, a massive story starts spinning in your head. They hate me, they are plotting against me, they are going to abandon me just like the others did. Notice that anxiety is always loud, always frantic, and it is entirely focused on your fear of getting hurt. True spiritual discernment moves completely differently. It is quiet, heavy, and totally objective. It doesn't rush you, and it doesn't cause your heart to race. It feels like a piece of cold data dropping straight into your spirit. It doesn't say, "I'm in danger," or "I need to run." It simply states a calm, heavy fact. Look closer. Something here isn't authentic. Look at how Jesus moved with Judas. When Judas was actively plotting to betray him for 30 pieces of silver, Jesus didn't stand there second-guessing himself, breathing heavily, or panicking. He didn't let his nervous system get dysregulated. He sat at the table, looked at Judas, and calmly said, "What you are about to do, do quickly." He saw the betrayal with perfect clarity, but it didn't disrupt his internal baseline. If the feeling inside you is frantic, chaotic, and screaming, that's your trauma talking. If the feeling is a heavy, quiet, undisturbed clarity, that is your radar. Learn to trust the quiet over the loud. What to do with the friction? The shelf method. What do you actually do when that quiet friction shows up and you recognize it's your radar? This is where most sensitive people mess up. We think that the moment we discern something off about someone, we have to act on it instantly. We think we have to confront them, block them on social media, or cut them out of our lives entirely. And because we don't want to cause unnecessary drama or conflict, we choose option B. We ignore the feeling completely and let them stay close. You don't have to choose between paranoia and confrontation. There is a third option, and it's what I call the shelf method. When your spirit picks up a weird vibe or a trace of insincerity, you don't need to make a final judgment call today. You don't need to brand them as a toxic enemy. Instead, just mentally take that observation and put it on a shelf. Tell yourself, "I feel this specific friction. I don't know the full story yet, so I'm not going to stress over it. But I am going to step back, protect my energy, and just watch how they move." By putting it on the shelf, you stop the 48-hour mental loop. You aren't arguing with yourself anymore. You are simply observing. You don't need to overanalyze their texts, and you definitely don't need to call 3 different friends to ask, "Hey, do you think so-and-so likes me?" That just adds more noise to your system. Just sit with the weight in the quiet, bring it before God in prayer, and let time do the heavy lifting. Character cannot hide forever. A person can fake a persona for a month, or even 6 months, but eventually, pressure or time will cause the mask to slip. You don't have to force the exposure. You just have to stay observant. Stop apologizing for your clarity. God gave you a sensitive spirit for a reason. It is not a design flaw. It is not a psychological curse, and it is certainly not something you need to apologize for or talk yourself out of. In a world full of noise, hidden agendas, and social masks, a sharp spiritual radar is one of the greatest assets you can have to keep your life aligned and your heart protected. Stop talking yourself out of your own clarity. Let me know in the comments below. Have you ever ignored that initial, quiet weight in your chest, only for reality to prove you completely right months down the line? Let's talk about it and support each other in the comments. If this video brought some clarity to your mind and gave your spirit some room to breathe, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We do real, honest conversations on faith, sensitivity, and wellness on this channel. Guard your peace, take care of your spirit, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.